Do you have certain plants that come rain or shine, those would be your top plants that you would keep over and over and over again? Doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, where you're living, you would want to keep those plants. These are my top 5 plants that I always want to keep, whether it's saving them from a burning building or just having them around all the time. Stick around with me and let's dive into it. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, for the people that have been here before, different view this time round. I am now standing where I would usually have the camera, and I've kind of flipped it around. So the camera is where I would normally stand, and this is what's usually behind the camera. Apologies for the fans and grow lights, but we're coming into winter. All of these things are needed to keep these plants happy. But yes, today's video, I thought I'd do kind of a bit of a highlight and a spotlight on my top 5 plants that, come rain or shine, I would always like to have in my life, basically, not even in a collection, because if I didn't have a collection, these 5 plants would be the ones that I would still like to have. Bit of a spoiler, I probably won't. I'm kind of looking around for the top 5 plants now. I don't think I'm going to be able to move any of them. So there's going to be pictures, and part of that is also another reason why I would always have these plants. The reason why I cannot move these plants, the people that have been here for a while know, they are huge and they are imposing, or they are kind of like vined all over other things. So it will kind of make sense. But enough of me prattling on. Let's have a look at the first one. And this will come as no shock to anybody that has been watching my videos for any length of time at this point in time. This is a plant that I normally have behind me. It's actually behind the camera right now, but the Philodendron esmeraldense. It had to have the first spot within this video. And this is a plant, again, just a bit of background. This is a plant that I got, I think, in the middle of the pandemic. So this was at least 5 years ago now, or at the very beginnings of the pandemic, actually, I should say. And it was an interesting one because I was talking to a really good planty friend, Nick, if you see this, hi. And we were discussing this after I got this plant, and I didn't realize that we were both looking at the same plant on eBay. So this plant was an eBay purchase originally, and it was at that point the most expensive plant I had ever bought, I think. And I think that was at 85 Great British pounds, and it was an auction, and I put it in at the last minute, and I still managed to get the plant. And I'm just like, you know what? I'll put the bid in, and if I get it, I get it, I get it. So the reason why I wanted to spend that extra bit of money is because, to begin with, and I'll see if I can find some pictures of when I first got it, and I'll put it here. I'm not entirely sure, but my plant care app might have it. It was already quite large, kind of more mature type leaves. So yes, there was a tiny bit of cheating on my part that I did not get a plant that was quite juvenile, which I know there's a lot more of the Philodendron esmeraldense that is coming up on the market at the moment, but they tend to be a bit more on the juvenile size. I'm starting to see kind of adolescent size, if that makes sense. But I did get it at that stage, and I have a very sneaky suspicion. So they were a plant that, if I'm not mistaken, at least here in the UK, Kaylee Ellen, back where the rare plant shop was a thing, had bought some in and sold them for a lot of money at that point. And I think this was a chop and prop from somebody who had originally got this plant. And I remember years ago, now that even Kaylee Ellen was saying that, oh, this is one of the plants that I kind of sold all the ones that we got into stock, but I would love to get one back in. Hopefully she did. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't checked recently, but managed to get this plant. And as I said, I have a sneaky suspicion that it might have been a chop and prop from one of those ones that originally got sold because it was so mature and because not that many people knew about this plant. But yeah, reasons why I would always want to have it in my collection. It has been one of the easiest plants that I've grown, both in here in the conservatory and regular household conditions. So that should tell you something. And It just grows consistently. I've grown it. I've got two plants now. I've got the original mother plant and I've got a prop that is in semi-hydro. Both have done exceptionally well. They don't really skip a beat. They do size up quite substantially and they are a bit of a show-stopping plant. Do they get pests occasionally? Yes. But do those pests ever really cause any problems? No. And again, I know that this might be because I have a slightly more mature plant, but the ease, the size, the looks of it would be a reason why I would always, always, always like to have a Philodendron esmeraldense in my life in one form or another. So moving on to plant 2, and plant 2 is one that I cannot move from its location, not because it's too large, it kind of is, but it's because it has literally wound all over this space. And anybody that has seen any of my feral plant videos, I think I've probably mentioned it more than once. I probably shouldn't be mentioning it more than once in each video, but you know. And this is a plant that I had no knowledge of. I literally saw this on the Grow Tropicals website at some point, and I was just like, oh, it looks kind of interesting. It's a bit plain, but it was really expensive, and I'm not spending that kind of money for a plant that I don't know. I haven't really grown that many plants within that genus, other than the obvious one, which will make sense when I kind of like tell you the name of this plant. Hopefully there should be a picture of this here. But it was, or it is, the Rhaphidophora hongkongensis. OMG, this plant grows in here like a weed. I would almost go as far as saying that this plant grows even more vigorously or more consistently in this space, and vines everywhere. I keep finding it in all the different locations. So it's kind of behind the camera and kind of to the left as I'm looking at it. And it has wound all the way up the side of one of the plant shelves, behind, up above. It's gone beside the back of it. And I think I've seen some of its leaves all the way down here. So it has spread like wildfire. Like wildfire. That's the word. Words on a Sunday. Stunning plant. Super easy. If I'm not mistaken, that is in semi-hydro. It does get a water reservoir through most of the summer, but I know that it doesn't like to be that wet in the winter, so I just make sure that there isn't the reservoir in the winter. However, stupidly easy to grow. I know it's not one that I could find easily, so this is one, I mean, most of these plants actually on this list, with the exception of maybe one or two, aren't that easy, but they are getting easier to find. But this is one that, again, I think I have only ever seen on the Grow Tropicals website. So I would say if you want a plant that vines beautifully, I've never grown it up something like a moss pole or anything. I know most Rhaphidophoras do generally appreciate a bit of support, but to be fair with this one, the leaves stay large, it vines, it creates really thick stems as well. So, because that's the thing as well, like if you're looking at something like a pothos or any form of epipremnum, generally speaking, unless you give it something to climb onto, most of those vines kind of, the stem stays a bit on the thin side. It's only when you give it some form of support does that stem start chunking up. With the Rhaphidophora hongkongensis, no, it starts going thick, even if it's kind of trailing and vining. So if you like something like that, the texture of the leaves is kind of like leathery, it's quite thick leaves as well. Not anything impressive, I will say this, it's just a plain green, simple leaf, slightly on the succulent side of things, so nothing to write home about. This is just the reason why this will always be in this top 5 list is just because of its sheer kind of willingness to grow without needing practically any babying for me. So the Rhaphidophora hongkongensis will always be a part of this list. Now mixing it up slightly, and I did do a review on this plant recently, and I'll put it at the top there. My Platycerium superbum! And I don't ever give this enough credit, and I don't maybe mention it as much as I should in this video, but this is a plant that I always look at, and I'm looking at it, it's on the kind of wall on the side there. It always brings me so much joy. And I'm so glad that I finally managed to do a second review video. I was right when I was doing the review recently that I had done one previously. 5 years, absolutely huge. And the moment that I saw this plant in the RHS Malvern, not this year, but the year before, where they had some big displays of very mature specimens of this, I'm just like, yep, yep. I know why I like it already, and I know why I'm still going to continue liking it, because if it gets to that size and it's that imposing, I'm not going to complain. And also, it's a fern that is easy. Like, how many ferns can you say that about? Because yes, it's mounted, so there is that level of complexity there where you do need to faff around a bit and kind of mount it and make sure that it's happy and all of these things. But generally speaking, and before anybody says it, I haven't just grown it in here, I've also grown it in household conditions, and it has been absolutely fine. Because does it need high humidity? Not necessarily. Would it appreciate it? Yes. So there is that to be said about it, but at the same time, grows consistently. It's not a fast plant, and hopefully at some point I would have linked the review video, the most recent review video in here, if you want to see that in more detail. But it grows consistently. It's imposing in terms of what it looks like, and it doesn't have the kind of watering demands that most ferns have. So it doesn't need to be kind of evenly moist all of the time and all these things. And to be fair, between you and me, I don't find that that is the reality with a lot of the ferns. And that is kind of something that's a bit of a myth. Not necessarily a myth, but it's kind of like if everybody kind of lumps all plants that are in one type. So if you lump all ferns together and you need to give one bit of advice about all of them, it means that some of them it's not going to apply to. Ferns being one of them, calatheas being the other one. Any kind of plant, like even if you generalize philodendrons, generalize anthuriums, yes, some things are going to overlap, but with this, the platyceriums generally, or the staghorn ferns, they tend to really veer away from the kind of usual predominant kind of care guidelines that you would get for ferns. So there is that. So does it ever go bone dry in my case? No, but do I think it could? Possibly. And I know a lot of the viewers that I have are also based in Australia, and I'm pretty sure the Platycerium superbum, or superbum, I should be saying the right word rather than superbum, superbum is originally from that kind of part of the world. And I've had some great tips and advice from people that are based in Australia, because they can see it kind of possibly growing out in the wild, and they've got like good advice on that. So yeah, it is one of those plants that can get huge, does appreciate a bit of amount. It doesn't need an awful lot of fussing. That's the other thing I was saying on the plant review for that one, is it doesn't generally get an awful lot of pests. That's the other big thing as well. Like there's something that needs to be said, because actually, and even the Rhaphidophora hongkongensis, like the occasional beanie bug here and there, just because it's probably touched something that had mealybugs, but it doesn't really cause it any issues. As I said, the esmeraldense philodendron does occasionally get maybe some spider mites, maybe some thrips, but nothing that ever really causes it any issue. The staghorn fern, and again, I've experienced no pests on this. I have had people on that video, granted, that have said that the only pest that they've really struggled with on that one is scale. I can't attest to that, because I was, up until very recently, very fortunate to say that I have never experienced scale at all. And generally speaking, a lot of the people in the UK, from what I am seeing, we don't generally tend to get scale that much here. I know it's not impossible, and I'll come on to that in just a second. I know a lot of people that are based in the US generally are more likely to experience scale. I don't know if that's to do with the growers who are over there or the conditions. I don't know. And I'd say I was almost never experienced scale. I have had scale once, and I'm trying to remember which plant it was. That's Schismatoglossus, I think, was the one that was covered in scales at some point. And I'm just like, absolutely not. You are not making my life fun. I am not enjoying you in any form, way or form. And you are covered in scales, and I do not, because I've never dealt with that pest type before. I'm just like, I don't know how easy you spread, how you spread properly. I've never experienced it on a long-term basis like most of the other pests that like spider mites, fungus gnats. mealybugs, thrips, all of these things I've kind of experienced. I kind of know and I can kind of adjust my expectations. With scale, I had no expectations. I'm just like, nope, to the compost gods, you will go. So there is that to be said about bringing it back into the staghorn or the Platycerium, not Epiphyrium, Platycerium superbum. Scale is one of the things that people that have said that they have got it do potentially experience sometimes. So that's the only one to maybe keep your eye out for. So the other plant that I would always like to have in my collection or house, and this is one that it took me years to find, and I am really enjoying growing it. There's a couple of caveats that I will say about this one, and this is the Trevesia or Trevesia. I can never remember how to pronounce that properly. I'll put the name at the top. Palmata, I think. Or is it the burckii? No, it's the burckii, I think, because I wanted, and I still want the palmata, because the way that the leaves grow, and hopefully if I don't find a picture from my plant, which is again behind you there, I should have potentially been filming the other way around. But I know that people wanted to see other angles of the conservatory, so this is for everybody who wanted to see other angles. The leaves look a bit like, I don't know how to describe it other than, you know, when you've got, you kind of fold paper, usually around Christmas time, and you cut the paper and then you unfold the paper and it looks like a snowflake? Did anybody else do that as a child around Christmas? Was it just me that's a weirdo? The leaves look a bit like that, specifically with the palmata, if I'm not mistaken. The burckii that I've got, and I'm going to be kicking myself in editing if I've got the second name wrong as well. That one is slightly different, but it's still giving that kind of vibe. So for that, and for the fact that it took me so long to find, and actually in the reality of it all, it has been easy to grow here. And this is one of the plants that there will be some caveats if I'm going to have it in my collection, but I would want to always have it in my collection. One, I've realized recently it's not a plant that you can take a cutting from and then it will regrow or kind of go from there and kind of branch out. So this grows very tall and you need to let it keep growing tall. And if I'm not mistaken, the way that most people will propagate this plant, I don't think it's impossible to propagate a top cut that way. But the problem is your mother plant, I don't think will necessarily branch out, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've seen online. A lot of people will do it from seed, and it's a tricky plant to get from seed, and there's not that many people that are aware of it, interested in it, all of these things. So it means that it doesn't come up very often for sale, and when it does, it's expensive because they know that there's a captive audience of people that would want to buy this specific plant. So when I did find it, it was on the pricier side. I think it was just over 100 Great British pounds, but it was an established plant, and I'd been looking for it for over 4 years at that point. So I'm just like, if I don't get it now, I will forever kick myself because I might never find it again, even if it wasn't the palmata that I wanted. I'm just like, let's grab this. The other caveats that I will say about this plant is it does have a bit of specific care needs. So I would have this plant wherever I would be. In an ideal world, a couple of things need to happen. One, I would need space. Two, I would grow it under a grow light or somewhere that has a very tall kind of window in front of it, ideally a skylight so it gets the light coming down from above. So there's all of these caveats for this one. And I would kind of be a bit more vigilant on pests because I've had a few mealybugs on that plant. It hasn't destroyed it, but I do need to stay on top of those. And its care needs change very drastically, even more so than houseplants between the summer and the winter. And I need to keep that in mind. The other thing is I would need to have it somewhere that it's relatively humid. I think this plant does appreciate some humidity. Does it need it to be super humid? Is it a terrarium plant? No, obviously it's huge. But it's one of these things that it has a lot of these caveats. So in winter, it needs a lot less watering. So this plant in winter might only get watered once every 10 to 15 days. In the summer, conversely, that plant needs watering every 2 to 3 days. So that gives you that kind of indication that it really, really slows down in the winter and does pretty much nothing. It goes more or less dormant. But in the summer is when it really, truly, truly shines. So the Trevesia or Trevesia is going to be always a plant that I would want to have in my care, just purely because for me, aesthetically, really, really pleasing. I'm also looking at it now. The stem also has got some very, very impressive looking spikes on it. And trust me, once or twice when I've had to take some things away, like kind of dead leaves from around other plants around it and I've accidentally scraped myself, you will do some damage. They are not like soft spines. They are, think almost as sharp and as tough as like rose thorns. It's that kind. They're not curved, they're just pointy, but yes, I would always try to have that plant in my collection. And now the last one, and I had to include an Anthurium in this, but again, it's like an easy Anthurium, an interesting Anthurium, and one that I would happily grow anywhere. Anybody surprised by the fact that it's a pendant Anthurium? My Anthurium vittariifolium. Several reasons for that. Several reasons for that. Super easy to care for, very thick roots. It's a great kind of showstopper from me, at least. I think it's a very different looking plant. A lot of plants can just have like green leaves and kind of like, it's just a green leaf. But the leaves on this just do really look like leather kind of belts. And it is one of those things as well, like the other reason why I want it is because say you've got a shelf like this and you're not in a conservatory like I am right now, but you're in a house and you don't have any top-down lighting like I do here, but you've only got lighting coming from this direction. If you've got something like a vittariifolium with the leaves dropping down, it's a really great thing to put at the very top of a shelf where there's not a lot of light at the top. There might be some light coming this direction because it doesn't need that light at the top. The leaves all drop down anyway. And it is just that as well. And it's also super easy. I think most people that I've spoken to on here as well, and I may have influenced, even though I don't try to influence any people to buy any plants, buy what you like. I just talk about the things that I like. The vittariifolium is one that a lot of people have bought, and I don't think I have heard too many bad things from anybody that has bought it. Yes, it can be a bit on the slower side when you get it really, really juvenile, but it does, when it does start sizing up, it sizes up beautifully. It's also another one of these plants that, at least in my experience, when it gets happy enough and mature enough, it will bloom a lot. So we'll throw out inflorescences. I cut them off, but again, this might be one that if I ever decide to kind of pollinate Anthuriums again, and I'm maybe restarting a collection or something like that, this is one that I would want to have for that reason. I don't know whether or not it takes to pollination from a lot of different Anthuriums well, because I have done pollination with the vittariifolium, but with self, if that makes sense. So it's just created another vittariifolium. I don't think I've ever had successful, I don't even know if I've tried actually, because it depended on the pollen that I had at that point, if I tried pollinating it with any other type of Anthurium. But that's an entirely different topic altogether. I'm going to get sidetracked here. But super easy for an Anthurium, one of the easiest Anthuriums that I own. Very different and unique. The leaves are very imposing. In terms of pests, it doesn't have a lot of issues with pests generally in my experience. The occasional mealybug, maybe once or twice I've had like spider mites on it, but not a huge amount. It has grown happily in soil. I am growing a prop of it in soil as well. I am also growing it in semi-hydro at the moment, absolutely fine. The one thing I will say about this, and again, another reason why this is an Anthurium that is on this list, it doesn't mind being on the drier side of things. So now in the winter, for instance, my vittariifolium, the water reservoir disappears. It really doesn't like it. It will rot. Not entirely, and that's the other thing. It's one of those Anthuriums that even if it does get root rot, if you catch it early enough, it's usually not the end of everything. With a lot of the heart-shaped Anthuriums and all of these things, even if you delay slightly and you catch some of the root rot, sometimes it's done. You're going to lose most of those roots, if not all of them, and then you're going to have to restart from scratch. The vittariifolium, it's happened to it a couple of times, but it knocks it back by a couple of months, but then it just bounces back. So yes, in the winter, I will entirely stop giving it a reservoir, and in the summer, I will bring it back in. So those are my top 5 plants that I would always have in my collection. If it was possible, I would always have the Philodendron esmeraldense, the Rhaphidophora hongkongensis, the Platycerium superbum, the Trevesia burckii, if I'm not mistaken, and the Anthurium vittariifolium. Every single time, if I had a choice to have just a handful, the 5 plants, wherever I would be living, those would be my 5 plants. And you can kind of see a pattern here, at least for my top 5. It's the ease, it's the look, it's the kind of pest resistance. No plant is really pest resistant, but the less likelihood of pests or any pests really causing any severe damage. Things like that are top of my list. And I think that's because I've been caring for plants for so long. I need things that are easy. I need things that have got a show-stopping thing. And I need things that I don't need to baby, whether it's humidity or watering or super fertilizing or being super careful of bugs and pests and all these things. I ain't got no time for that. And I probably won't always have the time for that. So that's why these are my top 5. However, over to you now. I am very, very curious as to what your top 5 plants are. Please put them down in the description below and maybe tell us a bit more about why they're your top 5 plants. And I give you full permission if you want, because I know sometimes this does happen and everybody's really apologetic. Oh my God, I've written an essay. Write an essay if you want. It's fine. I think that would be quite interesting for a lot of other people, not just to see my top 5, but to see everybody else's top 5 and see maybe if there's any overlaps or maybe if some things are surprising. If you also want to share maybe what part of the world you're at, that might also help different people. Like, so somebody's top 5 from like Finland might be very different from somebody's top 5 from Hawaii, if that makes sense. Like, it's going to be like territory specific. It doesn't have to be. If you don't want to do that, don't do that. But yeah, I'm very, very curious to know your top 5 is essentially what I'm trying to say. And I think other people might be as well. So yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.